Here are some photos of a swan I took recently. Equally impressive is how Morrowind turned 23 this year and captures more about player choice, power and freedom than some RPGs released this year do. Enough of the present, it's time to think of the past. As we did with Skyrim, let us explore. How was Morrowind described before Morrowind? The Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard game from 1998 makes for an interesting starting point. An antagonist in the game is a Dunmer assassin known as Dram, voiced by Jeff Baker, who would later voice Dunmer in Morrowind.
You die now, Redguard. The weapon.
Dram gives the Dunmer characterization, which still holds true in Morrowind. Bethesda used to have a website, redguard.com, which housed lore information about the Redguard game. It is now defunct, and has been archived within the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, aka the definitive Elder Scrolls wiki. The source gives a lot of interesting detail about Dram and Dunmer and Morrowind before the Morrowind game even came out. There are whispers that House Indoril, the chosen Dark Elven faction of the legendary tribunal, took Slight at the assassin's affairs and had him secretly executed in CE 800, which refers to Second Era 800, an insult the Morag Tong has yet to forgive. The description of House Indoril is true to what Morrowind shows us. The tribunal is mentioned in some ominous capacity. Redguard.com makes it seem as if Dram has been killed many times and keeps getting brought back to life. Ignoring that, what's interesting is that Dram was literally inspired on Boba Fett. John Pearson, Bethesda's lead artist for Redguard, said Dram was inspired by a well-known bounty hunter from a galaxy far, far away. Beskarama. The portrayal of Dunmer, the first proper one in the series, is based off a Star Wars bounty hunter. Fitting and appropriate, I think, to the hostile nature that Morrowind would establish its setting to be. As for the Morag Tong, during the development of Redguard, they were not fully developed or distinguished enough, perhaps, from the Dark Brotherhood. It says about Dram, like all members of the Morag Tong, Dram worships Sithis, the god of death. His ancestors were preeminent Nightblades of the Fourscore War, wherein the Morag Tong systematically destroyed the heirs of the Second Empire of Men. Why Dram now serves Cyrodiil, Morrowind's long-time enemy, is a mystery. Despite the centuries' difference in setting between this game and Morrowind, I think this passage does a good job at preparing us for how not everybody there is going to be friendly towards the Empire, even centuries later. The game was originally bundled with the Pocket Guide to the Empire First Edition, a book describing the provinces and lore of Tamriel. In the universe, it's been decried for apparently being Imperial propaganda, which is why future editions would more accurately describe provinces, especially Cyrodiil. We did a video on that. Despite that, Bethesda, on their 10th anniversary of the Elder Scrolls, called the Pocket Guide to the Empire First Edition the definitive source for information on the world of the Elder Scrolls, and that the world of the Elder Scrolls is one of the most interesting fantasy worlds ever created. I'm surprised they didn't break their arms patting themselves on the back that hard. With all that said, keep in mind, if you were to buy this game in 1998, read the Pocket Guide, then play Morrowind when it's released years later, would you, or would you not, be prepared with an accurate depiction of this landscape? The opening gives us a good start. Morrowind is now the land of the Dark Elves, whose origins are shrouded in mystery like the ash storms that regularly blanket their homeworld. Savage and proud, the Dark Elves shun all contact with the outside world. Straight away, Morrowind is established to be a hostile, xenophobic place. It even says you may be forgiven for believing that you have left Tamriel and entered a different world when you get there. The sky is darkened regularly by furious ash storms belched forth from the mighty Vardenfell volcano, which we would now know as Red Mountain. Cloaked and masked dark elves tend herds of giant insects. A courier clatters by on the back of a 20-foot-tall crab-like creature. Straight away we've got Quamas and Silt Striders introduced. The book goes into detail about the forced servitude, including Argonians, Khajiit and Human. The Great Houses are given quite a lot of accurate detail. Under the tribunal cult, the Dark Elven clans were finally welded into one nation, although clan rivalry remains bitter up to the present day, and the clans cooperate with one another only with reluctance. 5 clans, known as the Great Houses, Indoril, Redoran, Telvanni, Dres, Hlalu, now entirely control the politics and trade of Morrowind, although in earlier times there appears to have been 6. Foreshadowing House Dagoth. Clans still engage in bloody infighting through the unique institution of the Morag Tong, the sanctioned guild of assassins. Clans routinely hire the Morag Tong to eliminate their enemies, and the assassins of the Morag Tong may kill their assigned marks with impunity. as long as they conform to the obscure but strict rules of their guild. This follows along nicely with what Morrowind would show us, as does further description of the great houses. Indoral's capital is Almalexia, the capital of Morrowind itself, and the tribunal priesthood. Redoran guards the western flanks of Morrowind and are known as the best warriors among the Dark Elves. Telvanni is the most xenophobic of a xenophobic race, shunning all contact with outsiders, preferring to tend their herd of giant insects amid the rocky hills and islands of the extreme northeast. Hlaalu is the smallest and weakest of the 5 clans, clinging to great house status in their ancient capital of Narsis. Hlaalu nevertheless maintain a limited commerce with the Empire. But you didn't come here to hear this, no, you came here to hear about the tribunal. Well, Almalexia, the largest and oldest city in Morrowind, named for its patron goddess, truly an ancient city, built over the ruins of a vast dwarven city, the centre of the tribunal cult, in the sprawling palace temple of Mournhold, a city within the city. The priests of the tribunal rule in the name of their legendary deities. So for Sil, many tales are told of this clockwork city of brass hidden in the steaming swamps of southern Morrowind, the lair of the most mysterious member of the tribunal. No reliable reports exist of its location, or if this city even exists outside of story and song. The tribunal is the strange heathen religion of the Dark Elves. They worship 3 gods known as the tribunal, and believe these gods walk the earth and rule Morrowind directly. These tribunes, if they ever existed, have not been seen in centuries. In Morrowind's case, Almalexia becomes reclusive, so Sil has not been seen in a very long time, and Vivek is just hanging out in his palace, but not everybody is going to be allowed to ever get that close and see him in person. Overall, this seems very accurate and interesting. Each tribune, who go by the barbaric names of Almalexia, Sil, and Vivek, has an eponymous city dedicated to its worship, and a palace or temple within each city where the god supposedly resides. Yep, we see that for real. They would know Vivek's name with a C at the end rather than a K. It makes sense that somebody centuries ago would potentially spell the name incorrectly, or that it's changed over time. Next is something significant. The priests of the tribunal cult are all powerful in Morrowind. Strange processions of fantastically garbed priests roam the land, selecting new candidates to serve the tribunal, who are seized without resistance and never seen again. Morrowind's main quest deals more with the dissident priests, those who go against the tribunal's teachings, are imprisoned, never to be seen again, within their floating prison. An ironic location, providing definitive proof that Vivek and the tribunal are all too real. Otherwise it would smack into the earth. There isn't a definitive date of when it was first suspended into the sky. Well, let's assume it was there the whole time. Perhaps the author of this particular passage of the Pocket Guide didn't believe it was suspended by Vivek. He could have thought it was a combined power of his priests as perhaps a symbol to prove that they are real, or he could have mistaken it for a mere illusion, or being propped up and suspended by some other force. Going to a city named after a deity and disputing the existence of the deity when there's a giant floating rock in the sky that would make sense that the so-called deity would be able to control. Is Bethesda not including that detail yet because it hadn't existed in their storyline yet? Vvardenfell is described as the vast volcano of Tamriel. The giant mountain dominates the north of Morrowind. It is a small continent all to itself. On a clear day, the peak can be seen from Almalexia 250 miles to the south. A dwarven kingdom flourished in the north of Morrowind, the region now covered by the Vvardenfell volcano. Indeed, this vanished realm gave its name to the mighty volcano that obliterated it. Vvardenfell is a dwarven word meaning City of the Strong Shield. This passage makes it seem as if Vvardenfell is almost entirely Red Mountain and is entirely smoky ashlands. That was Bethesda's original intention for a while, it seems. For the 10-year anniversary of the Elder Scrolls, like we mentioned earlier, there was a development map of what Morrowind may look like in the Morrowind game. Vvardenfell is literally just ashlands with some settlements spread around. In universe, in the second era, it's possible that Red Mountain was active enough that people who actually make it to Vvardenfell to describe their experiences didn't get very far, so just naturally assumed the entire island was ash right now. Aldrune and Vivek are in the correct place. Next, if we go back and forwards at the same time, to the original Elder Scrolls game, Arena. So chronologically set after Redguard, but it's the first game in the series. Red Mountain is active and is consistent amongst the horizon. It is called Dagobah. Morrowind shows us that Dagobah is the last deity in Morrowind, who received his powers in the same way as the Tribunal did. Morrowind also establishes that there is a dwarven ruin that has been renamed Dagobah, to be used as a fortress by Dagobah. Meaning, I suppose it would make sense if there was a particularly violent ash storm and somebody pointed towards the mountain and said, "What do you call that?" And somebody just said, "Dagobah." Because the Elder Scrolls Arena is an old 90s game made by a team who had no idea that it would eventually lead to the best-selling role-playing game of its time. Of course the map's going to be inaccurate compared to a bigger budget game set in this exact place years later. But hey, the countless posts online of people playing Morrowind and getting lost because it doesn't have modern sensibilities like quest markers, which I actually think is a good thing, is accurate to how the map is in Arena. Let's pretend that you are in Vardenfell and you are not a dummer, you are an outlander. Let's pretend you want to find the town of Aldrune. Let's say you've got to decipher a harsh accent of a native. So if they go up to you and say, "Aldrune is this way," then of course you're probably going to spell it wrong, and because you don't know where you're going, and it's going to be hard to see if there's a volcano blighting the area, then of course you're going to go to the wrong place, and assume something is in the wrong place. For all we know, they could have got misleading instructions to get them away from a certain place. Play Morrowind, and Vardenfell is only really recently open to outsiders because it's a religious protectorate. And open is a bit of an overstatement. When creating a character in Arena, you go for a Dark Elf, their background is literally fiery hellscape. Of course you're going to get town names wrong and in the wrong place if you can't safely explore anywhere. Overall, Redguard is accurate and would adequately prepare you for the world of Morrowind in most capacities. Then we get to the second Elder Scrolls game, Daggerfall, where we've got Queen Baranzaya introduced, who in the code of the game is a Dark Elf, who is described as a Dark Elf. But does she look like a Dark Elf? No, she's given art assets to make her a Breton for some reason. And do you know why? Because your character in Daggerfall will suffer greatly.